Mike Huguenor, welcome to New Books Network.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm delighted that you're here, Mike. I'm wondering if we can kick this off by having you just tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm mostly known as a musician. Traditionally, I've been in a lot of kind of indie rock bands over the years, DIY bands. Currently, my kind of main gig is playing guitar with Jeff Rosenstock. I play in the band that's on the records and live and everything. And then also I am a writer and for a long time kind of was a attempted fiction writer, I would say. And then I started transitioning to writing more music journalism. And the reason we're talking today is because my first book is coming out, which is called Elvis is Dead, I'm Still Alive. And it's the history of the label Asian Man Records, Bay Area punk label that this May is turning 30 years old.
Wonderful. Well, and the book is coming out from Clash Books. So I love Clash Books. I love what they do. I've featured some of their work involving Aaron Carnes' In Defense of Ska book on New Books Network, which people can go and find as well, which I find is a really awesome companion to your book as well. But let's get into the label itself. I think that we should start off by talking a little bit about Mike Park. We're on a books podcast network where people might not know who he is. So just tell listeners of New Books, who is Mike Park? Tell us a little bit about his journey in life.
Sure. Mike Park is a musician from the South Bay area, technically Los Gatos, Montessorino area in Northern California. He was in a band called Skank and Pickle in the 90s that were sort of considered one of the first third wave ska bands. Excuse me. They were sort of at the forefront of the genre and then also started a record label that released the first Less Than Jake album, full length, excuse me. They had put out some 7 inches and things like that before, but they released the first Less Than Jake full length. And then he ended up starting a different label, which was Asian Man Records, started in 1996. And that ended up reprinting that Less Than Jake record as their first record, and then breaking some pretty big bands from the underground. They put out the first records by Alkaline Trio. They put out early records by Joyce Manor. Bands that have kind of broken through on TikTok more recently. They put out records by The Taxpayers and Korea Girl and AJJ, as well as like DIY punk bands of the 2000s like Lemuria and Bomb the Music Industry. Um, as well as really a lot of the ska bands that were really supporting the underground in the 90s as well, like ME330 and Johnny Sacco and a lot of others, honestly. Five Iron Frenzy, Meal Ticket, the list can go on for a long
Yeah,
time on that one.
yeah.
But for a long time, the label was kind of considered a ska label because of that, but really it's a very broad picture of the American underground, and often the Bay Area underground is kind of how it ends up being. There's a lot of local music that comes out of the label. Mike Park is also a man of lore within the DIY scene, and has a very particular experience as a Korean American in punk, which is something that has been pretty underrepresented, especially in the 90s, was very underrepresented. And that kind of mirrored a lot of his own experience in the Bay Area as well. There was, especially in the mid-century 20th century, there was really a lack of diversity in the way that the Bay Area has totally changed. Honestly, the Bay Area is incredibly diverse now, but at that time it was kind of monocultural and very white. And Mike was kind of a groundbreaker, or like a gate crasher, kind of, in a way, where you kind of opened the door for a lot of people. Um, and so this book is sort of looking at 30 years of Mike Park and 30 of Mike Park's label, and kind of the effect it's had on all these various scenes, the important eras, as well as kind of I try to put it in a sort of a context. There's sort of a what's the right word? Like a fork in the road that happened when I was beginning to write the book that kind of is sort of the larger question of the book, basically. Will the label continue the way it has been continuing?
Yeah. So this label is, I was thinking about this in my life. What are the most important record labels of my life as far as my own formative journey as a huge fan of music? And Fat Records is number one for me.
Mm,
And I was thinking, like, what are the other labels? And then it was obviously Epitaph made that list. But then I realized that Asian Man is actually more influential in my life than Epitaph. So my personal list of labels that inspired my life the most from the very beginning in when I started really going to shows in 1998 is Fat Records number one, Asian Man Records number two, and Epitaph number three. Um, I grew up in St. Louis. And so obviously my connection with Asian Man is MU330 from day one.
absolutely. Yeah, it
So
must be.
tell me your first recollection of encountering Asian Man records just as a fan of music in general.
Well, I was a kid. I was born in 1984, so I was a kid kind of in the third wave era, and
Hmm.
I heard excuse me, I heard like I'm trying to think what I heard first. Actually, it was probably maybe Real Big Fish or possibly the Boss Tones, but Less Than Jake was right around that time. All of them kind of had minor hits on Bay Area radio, and I remember getting the current Less Than Jake album, Losing Streak, and loving it, and then being like, oh, they have this other one, buying it, seeing that it was on Asian Man, which was a label I had no concept of yet. I was like 13, I think.
Hmm.
And that same year, probably within a span of months, a couple people that I knew from school had actually volunteered at Asian Man and were like passing out like promo CDs to people who were like, check out this. And I remember getting a promo CD of the Knowledge album, as well as I think actually I got the promo of Son of Pezcor, um, which I was not actually released by Asian Man, was like a Capitol Records thing that just kind of was floating around in the ether, I think, and they were probably some at the garage, basically. But anyway, so it was like first kind of through more natural kind of medium, like through the radio, basically, and through then following the trail of a band I liked, and then almost immediately afterwards through my social group in a very kind of like reinforcing way where I was like, oh, this is like a thing, basically.
Hmm. Yeah, we were like completely obsessed. I've been digging back into some of the setlist.fm trying to find out some of the earliest shows that I saw. And I saw MU 330 headline over Alkaline Trio in 1998, I believe, at a club called the Side Door, which no longer exists. And I actually sent a DM to Ted Mole from MU 330, the drummer who's their archivist. And I
Right.
was like, I haven't received a response yet, but I was like, Ted, I need to know what the date was for the MU330 Alkaline Trio show at Side Door where you guys headlined over them. But
Oh, you know
and
what? I bet you could find it yourself by the live album. It has a list of every show they'd played up to that date. And
I
I think
forgot about the live album. Live, oh yeah,
it,
right.
yes, exactly. And that one in the liner notes, which is on Discogs. You can find an image of it on Discogs. It'll probably list the date on there.
Amazing. Okay, I need to find that. And then I definitely saw Alkaline Trio on several times. March 17th, 2000, November 26th, 99, October 9th, 99, June 24th, 99, and April 16th, 99. So in 1999, I saw Alkaline Trio one, two, three, four times within the between April and November of that year, all in the same club in St. Louis, because they used to come down from Chicago every other month. I mean, it was absolutely nuts. And so Asian Man is like I saw the Honor System early, Alkaline Trio, MU330. Saw the first Lawrence Arms show in St. Louis. I saw Link 80 with their roadie on vocals,
Stony.
Stoney. I saw him. Adam Davis hates that I saw that tour as well.
Well,
So anyway, I mean, so all of this is to say, like, this is such an important group of bands to me personally that, my life would have been forever changed had I not been to those early MU330 shows. So years go by, you are in bands, you're playing stuff. How do you become a personal insider at the label? How does your journey progress to being a listener of the music to being involved?
It was not so long afterwards, to be honest. When I was shortly out of high school, I started a band called Shinobu. We were
Hmm.
like, I wanted to be an indie rock band, and I thought kind of we were, but the indie rock scene at the time was mostly kind of like dance Dancy
The
and
Faint.
the Faint and the Strokes, all the bands, and it was a different thing than what we were doing. We were much more influenced by the Weaker Thans and by like um, what I found to be like indie rock music, like Pavement and Built to Spill and things like that. But we were running in a punk scene, so we excuse me, and we had been in punk bands previously, so we ended up being kind of like an indie punk band. And people tell me now we're sort of like one of the early versions of that kind of micro genre. But Mike Park ended up offering to put out our record. So we put out our second full length with Asian Man, which is called Worst Word Ho and came out, I think, in 2003. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I actually listened to that record on my drive a little bit this morning. I was scrolling through a bunch of Asian Man stuff that was listed in the book, and I actually listened to the first three tracks from Worksword Horror this morning on my
Oh,
drive.
cool.
Yeah,
Thank you for listening.
yeah, no, it's awesome. And so okay, so you get in the band, and then what happens? Like on
Well,
the
yes.
label.
Oh yeah, so well we put out an album on the label and well we met up with Mike basically. He had offered and so we're and you know, I had heard about this label and I was like, "Wow, Asian Man, they're like a known quantity. This is like a real thing." And they want to put out our album. This is going to be amazing and I had all these like ideas of what we wanted to do and I remember we met with him in a booth at a Denny's and he listened to everything and he was like, "Well, I don't do anything. So I'll put out the record, but that's about it." And it was kind of like a realization that like my ideas of what a label did are I think everybody's ideas of what a label does are different until you start working with a label, honestly. And every label is different, but Mike's very upfront about choosing to not do much. And it's a savvy choice because it means that the label stays financially feasible and ends up being something where it has like this air of fun to it rather than like rigidity or something. And but anyway, he fully didn't really do anything. Like we got on the website and he paid for the CDs, which was great. We got a poster. But then we booked our tour ourselves and like it helped a little bit. Like some places I think like the name recognition helped. But I remember like there's other places where people had no idea and you know, this is in 2003. This is like pre Facebook, pre
Hmm.
Spotify, pre all of that. Um, I remember we had booked a show in this place that looked cool in I think Virginia Beach. It was in Virginia, and it was down this crazy bridge you had to go over to get there. I'm pretty sure it was Virginia Beach, and like the show was fine. There weren't that many people there. It was like in a garage, like a kid's garage. It was kind of like I got the impression it was kind of like a teen kind of like up and coming teen kind of thing in the city. But then at the end, like we have been like, oh, this is gonna be a good one. He at least knows the label. He's gonna be psyched on it and everything. And then I remember talking to the guy at the end, and he's like, "So how long have you guys been on Fat Man Records?" And I was like, "Oh, he doesn't have any idea what this even is. He's just like said yes to an email, basically." Uh, so it was a lot like that when we were on Asian Man. It was like we tried and we didn't really have much success, but I think that we reached a lot of other musicians. And we did kind of carve out a little niche for ourselves. And so we ended up putting out like labels on, or excuse me, records on other friends' labels afterwards. Kind of, we're like, we don't want to burden Mike with like another thing that he's going to file away as never making money. And again, there was no streaming at the time, so we there was no passive money coming in either or anything like that. So, um, just a different time and a very like uncertain time in the music industry in the early 2000s, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's kind of when the drop happened because of downloading and things like that. So there's
Yep.
really the uncertainty is huge. Where did you go from Shinobu as far as your relationship with the label?
Mm. So basically, everybody in Shinobu moved out of the Bay Area. It became kind of too expensive, and everybody had different things going on. And we were sharing a practice space with our friend's band, Pterodon, who we had done a split with, a split 7 inch. And at the same time that all the guys from Shinobu left, their guitarist decided he was going to like get a full-time job and stop playing music. So then it was like just the two of them, the Max and Morgan, the drummer and bassist of Pterodon, and me from Shinobu left in the practice space. And I remember being like, would you guys please let me play in a band with you? I would love to play in a band with you. That would be awesome. And so then we started Hard Girls at that point, which was like my next band, and that ended up being pretty active on Asian Man as well. We put out um, two full lengths and a collection. That might be everything. There might be a split also.
What is it?
You know,
1,000 Surfaces is on Asian Man,
yes,
and Hard is Hard on there too. Yeah, Hard's on there as well.
that's kind of the collection, and then Floating Now I think is also on Asian Man.
Okay.
And I think that's basically mostly everything we put out. But then while I was playing in that band, also Jesse Michaels, the singer of Operation Ivy and Common Rider, had reached out to Mike Park and was interested in starting a new project. And Mike put him in touch with Skylar, who was the label manager at the time and had done some recording. And in talking to Skylar, he was like, "Hey, do you know anyone who would want to be in a band with me?" And he suggested Hard Girls. And so basically, Hard Girls became the backing band for Jesse Michaels' next band, Classics of Love.
Your Classics of Love also?
Correct.
Oh man, that record is so freaking good, man.
Thank
Like
you.
that record is amazing. Oh my God. Okay, so tell like okay, keep going. Sorry.
That's okay. No, yeah, but yeah, so then Hard Girls and Classics of Love were kind of happening simultaneously. And then the same well then basically I got picked up for the Jeff Rosenstock band once Jeff went kind of solo.
Hmm.
During this time, like Classics and Hard Girls, both Shinobu as well, had all played shows with on the music industry. We were close friends. And then once that band kind of fizzled, Jeff was out here to record some stuff with Mike Park. We were backing him up for a Bruce Lee band record that the two of us were playing on together. And then we both were playing together on a Dan Adriano solo record. And in the process, Jeff was like, "Hey, I'm thinking of starting a project. Do you want to play guitar in it?" I just started playing in his band too. So for a minute, it was Hard Girls, Classes of Love, and Jeff all happening simultaneously. Um, both Max ended up moving from the Bay Area to Philadelphia, and Morgan ended up moving to Colorado. Again, the Bay Area is hard to live in,
Hmm.
unfortunately, and that kind of put both those bands sort of on hold. Jesse ended up moving to LA, and he ended up carrying on the band with some new players down there, and so he's still doing Classics of Love with like a new band, basically. Um, but then, so then at that point, the Jeff band kind of became my sole real full-time thing. And I've done some solo music as well, and now that's kind of a thing I'm doing somewhat more regularly, since I don't have like a full-time outlet band, basically. Um, but then in the process, yeah, I was then also editing at the Alt Weekly in San Jose. I was editing the art section, and so interviewing a lot of local musicians and covering a lot of events, and kind of honing my writing a little bit,
Yeah.
thinking a lot more about form, and trying to write consistently. And I was writing every day, and publishing a thing every week, and it was a big output, and it really got me comfortable with the thought of just like you can't have writer's block. You are writing now. You and it you're it we're going to make something, and so it was really helpful. I think I grew a lot, and I got a lot more confident in um reaching out to people, and I had been freelancing before that, so I got more confident in pitching and stuff too. But really, then as I'm writing about all these people locally, that's when I started thinking more about Asian Man again, and was like, Asian Man, has been huge in my own life and in so many other people's lives. And it's, I had that realization that the label was about to turn 30, like coming up. And I remember asking Mike, like, is anybody doing anything about this? Is anyone writing anything, or what is someone documenting this? 30 years is like a big thing.
Yeah,
Um, I think that's even the time frame that Merge Records had in their own book, that it was covering like 30 years of the label. Could be wrong about that, but something like that. Um, and it's miraculous for a label of Asian Man size that it's one person who's released over 400 albums at this point and done it for 30 years, and sustained his life on it, and many other musicians' lives. Um, so then I asked Mike, and I was like, would you be interested in doing this? Is this something that you'd be okay with? And he was just like, yeah, go for it. Let's do it. Which was great. It was really supportive. He was very supportive and very open. And so we started having these long conversations that I'd record and just kind of filling in my own gaps of knowledge, and then just kind of learning more about him and about all of this. And then right around then too, I had this realization that like it's in the name of the label. This is an Asian American label run by an Asian American who is very much a I'm trying to think of the right word, like almost like a role model for a lot of people.
sure.
Someone who is really inspiring because he did stand up for both his community and also for a lot of ethical choices, a lot of punk ethics and a lot of left ethics. And He was visible at a time where there wasn't a lot of visibility. And I think in so doing made a lot of other people feel comfortable, feel like there was space for themselves in the scene as well. But also, I'm saying this because I had the realization as I was starting to write it that like maybe a white guy shouldn't write this book, you
It's
know?
hard. Yeah,
Um,
I was just thinking that, but I'm glad you're saying, I'm glad you're bringing it up.
yes, that was really my thought. And I was like, I don't want to be taking this away from somebody. I don't want to like if there is an Asian American writer who feels connected to this and wants to tell this story, I don't want to take that away from them. I want it to be something that is available. And so I was asking Mike, I was like, has anyone talked to you about this? Has anyone expressed interest? Is there anyone doing anything? And he had said no, there wasn't. Nobody had reached out. Nobody was working on anything at the time. Um, and then I reached out to a number of friends, Asian American friends, and just was like, listen, hear me out. I just need to know your honest opinion on this. Should I not do this book? Because I don't want to be like appropriating. I don't
Hmm.
want to like take away basically. If I'm going to do it, I want to do it because I care about this subject and I care about what I think it is saying in the world. And Every person that I asked, I went to multiple people, writers, musicians, people who I respect, people's opinions who I really respect, and they all were very supportive of the idea. And I'm not trying to talk myself up, but they basically said that like it was a good sign that I was considering that, basically. And I hope that it is. The truth of the matter is that like I think it's fair to say that that may be a slight gray area. And I don't want to have taken anything away from anyone. I really do want this to be a celebration of these things, and to really help share Mike's story as a very important Asian American figure.
Yeah.
Um, and Yeah, but anyway, so there's been that is to say there's been a lot going into the book and a lot to process, and it feels a lot bigger than just punk music to me personally.
Yeah. Well, and just it's as a reader, who has read the book, you come across very conscientious of that. You tell the story of the Parks family's experiences with immigration, with racism, with Mike's efforts to form Asian American bands to go out on the road. You talk so much about that. So I really can pick up what you're putting down as a reader. So I just wanted to say that I think that you did an amazing job in that regard. But, you know, this book is so wide ranging as well. You talk about so many bands, you profile so many people. And as somebody who does projects that require tremendous amounts of organization myself, involving interviewing and documenting for another project that I do, this is hard work, and I would love to know about the logistical process that you went through to put this together. Because in the book, you talk how you emailed back and forth with certain people, like the former drummer from Less Than Jake, for like a year and weren't able to get certain things done. Like, tell me a little bit about the logistics you went through to make this happen, because this project is massive.
Yeah, it was more than 100 interviews. And there's a lot more kind of archival stuff that I was going to as well. But basically, it started with Mike Park. I would interview him and I would make a list of all of these people who I should also talk to. Everybody in the bands that it seemed important to me, people in his own life that seemed important to me. Um, w- Agents, managers, other record labels. Mike has released albums on Hopeless Records, and so I wanted to interview him. There were Lewis from Hopeless, I mean to say, and then there are lots of record producers. And so basically, I put together this huge list of more than 100 people, um, and then started contacting all the ones that I had already, basically. I kept a notebook where each page I had like the interview, and then I would fill a full page with questions. And it would be, I got this interview with this person today. I'm going to ask all of these questions, see what happens, see where I get, basically. And then, so while I was beginning the project, I was touring with the Jeff Rosenstock band and also editing the paper. And at a point when the book got accepted by Clash and when it became real and when there was a deadline attached to it, and the Jeff Band was very active as well, I ended up quitting the paper because I was like, I have to be doing this. I really editing a weekly paper on top of doing this on the road most of the time was a fairly large uh, task. And
Yeah.
so basically it would I kind of cleared some space for myself, and then my calendar would be like every day trying to interview someone, trying to transcribe. Usually I would say transcribe 30 minutes of a previous interview, and then also write. I would usually have like either 500 to 750 words, something like that. And so every day I would be like trying to check these things off. Okay, I'm interviewing X today, and I'm chipping away at the interview with Y, and I'm writing Z amount, basically. Um, and I had kind of initially written an outline. I really took form very seriously for this book, and I really tried to think about the narrative structure of it. And so then once I did that, I kind of sketched out what the structure should be, basically, and then started finding like where to divide the bands into which sections, basically, what made sense, where when does it make sense to talk about ME330? When does it make sense to talk about slapstick? When does it make sense to talk about Alkaline Trio? And I made the decision, for example, with Alkaline Trio to talk about slapstick first, including a lot of bands that are somewhat may seem somewhat obscure to people, like Colossal or
Hmm.
the Honor System and things like that. Especially compared to Alkaline Trio. But it to me made sense in a narrative arc to first establish these things and then get to Alkaline Trio and have it build in this way, basically, even if some of the things were occurring slightly after Alkaline Trio was happening. Um, but so basically, I'm like every day trying to chip away at like the volume of people to talk to and getting in touch with people, um, and then also trying to write actively. And then really, I really took seriously the idea of transcribing the interviews myself, because during the process of transcription is usually when I find the heart of what someone is saying. I find
Hmm.
like it's one thing when you're doing the interview, I'll make notes and stuff about like what good parts were, like return to this part. But it's when I'm typing it out and when I'm hearing it and like sitting with the words and coming back to it that really I feel like I find what they were saying in the interview. And I think you know, we live in an era where convenience is so prioritized. There's all these transcription softwares and things like that. And I think this book would have been much weaker if I had used something like that rather than taking the time to do the transcription myself.
Hmm. Excellent. Well, okay, so there is something that I want to ask about.
Sure.
A huge rumor in my
Mm.
life that I heard for years was confirmed in your book in the Alkaline Trio chapter about the lineup change after the Maybe I'll Catch Fire record. Uh,
Ah,
was there any? I was like, I couldn't believe that this rumor was confirmed in this book. And so, what were some of your biggest shocks or your biggest revelations that you learned during the research process that stand out to you as being like, whoa, that was a cool moment?
yeah. I mean, there were many because some of these things happened so unexpectedly. Uh, that is one, and I'll just say, the reason there isn't more information is there is someone who very much requested to not be included in
Yeah.
the book, and so I
Oh,
did. I
I know exactly who you're talking about because the void is large in that regard.
Sure,
I won't
and
say
I
more, but I know.
yes, and I very much respect the request, and I do not want to in any way uh make anyone feel uncomfortable with the story or make blow up anyone's spot or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to talk about what happened. And so uh yes, the person who in the lineup chain told me about it, but also I couldn't really say much because I was respecting the wishes of someone else as well. And so, um, but that was a shocker for sure. There were plenty. The one that I keep coming back to that I loved I love that it occurred was speaking with Ruth Schwartz, who was one of the founding editors of Maximum Rock and Roll and started More Damn Records, the distributor that distributed like Kill Rock Stars and Alternative
Yeah.
Tentacles and like all these major things. And like, I kind of wasn't sure if I would be able to track her down. And she was like classically kind of New York energy where it was like a little brusque and stuff, but it was a very fun interview and I really appreciated her honesty and like it felt for me like a get, like that was a big one. I am really glad to have documented someone who was really, this is the person who was getting Green Day records into record stores, basically,
Yeah.
during Dookie, and
Yeah.
so it's like, this is, I think her role gets kind of overlooked in the discussion of things, but like, she was like a linchpin of 90s punk occurring, basically. And so that was a really huge one for me. I remember when I talked to the guy from Grizzly Studios in I think they're in Petaluma, they're in the North Bay somewhere. No longer active, but I was like, I gotta get in touch with Roger from Grizzly. How am I gonna do it? And I looked up the studio on just online, and it listed a phone number for the studio, even though it said closed. So I was like, I don't know, we'll see what happens. And I called, and it was just him, and he just answered the phone, and I was like, I want to interview you. Can we do that sometime? And he was like, yeah, let's do it now. And so,
Nice.
so I was like, okay, great. And so things like that happened where it would be very like spontaneous and unexpected. There's a part that talks a little bit about the band the Tonsure Monsters, and they had this multiple people told me about this night where they almost died on the river because they were with Skank and Pickle's booking agent. He was taking them down the Tahoe River, and then their boat broke, and they were at night in the middle of the mountains, wet, and they were like couldn't figure out what to do. Like everybody in the band wanted to tell me the story as well as the booking agent, and so then I was like trying to get some confirmation on it, and like looked up like people in the air, like meteorologists in the Tahoe area, found this guy, called him up, and right on the phone he was like, oh yeah, at that point the river, they like the greatest drought in history had just ended, and he was like describing the river conditions. I was just like furiously jotting down notes as fast as I could because it was like so just happening in the moment. I couldn't believe it. And things like that were often happening, and as I was writing it, like the whole thing with the label being, so basically the premise of the book is that there was an offer to buy the label.
Yeah.
um and the offer to buy the label came in the day before I came to interview Mike to start writing the book. It was totally incidental, but when it happened, it felt like this is meant to be. Like this clearly was something that is of significance occurring at the exact moment that I'm setting down to write this thing.
Yeah.
And it felt another sign that it was time to kind of write this, basically.
Well, and it's crazy too because the timing is insane because Fat Records recently sold their entire business over to the owners of Hopeless Records and Louis Posen,
Yes.
who you mentioned a little bit ago. So like this is a big deal. The archiving of the and the ownership of huge bodies of music that can be used in many ways for by many people. This kind of stuff matters, especially to a lot of people like me, who grew up and cared about this music tremendously. So
Oh,
what? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, not only to the listeners, but also to the musicians, because then their catalogs end up being owned by someone that they didn't necessarily have a relationship with in the first place. I'm sure Hopeless is going to be great.
Well,
But
yeah, I mean, I interviewed Posen recently for another podcast where he was talking about what he's going to do with the Fat Records catalog and stuff. And I was like, man, I bet the bands feel so good about this is the guy that bought the label because he is such a straight shooter with regards to his charity work and the
yeah,
organizations that he works with. And I mean, what they lucked out big time. So that's a big
totally.
deal for Asian Man to be considering selling their catalog as well, you know?
Absolutely. And again, this is 30 years of musicians who then like would be entering into a totally new relationship with their music and with somebody, basically.
Yeah.
So it's a consequential event for sure.
Okay, so when you were digging through, I was listening to so many bands that I hadn't listened to in years because of this book. Like some of the biggest surprises was Colossal, I was like, wow, this is like almost like another version of like Don Caballero
Yeah.
or Slow Gherkin, Shed Some Skin. What a record.
Yes. Yes.
Yoko Utsumi's record that she did with MU330 blew my
Yes.
mind. And then I went
Yes.
back and listened to Shinobu and Spraynard, and I was listening to that Shady View Terrace split that I hadn't heard in years. Sundowner, but I'm a huge Bat Boy fan and Teens in
Mm.
Trouble. So, what are some records that are like really standouts for you that you think that listeners of this interview should go and check out to really get a sense of maybe the different eras of this label?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that like off the top,
There's
you'd probably
so
want
many
to.
good ones. It's really tough.
Yeah, it's true. It's tough to narrow it down, but like if you're talking about early label, you probably want to listen to Slapstick. You'd probably want to
Hmm.
listen to the Slapstick stick discography. Kind of is like a presentation of where this label kind of got its footing, the sound of its kind of early era. Uh, then you'd really want to listen to "God Damn It" by Alkaline Trio.
Hmm.
Everybody should probably hear that one. That record is like, and it's a very very good record.
It's one of the best records ever in the entire genre of punk music ever.
It's so vibey. The performances are so on. There's I talk about it in the book, but there's a sort of recording quirk that occurred in it where some of the backup vocals were recorded before the main vocals, and because of that, the vocals all have this crazy energy where everything feels very upfront and very present, and it doesn't quite feel like backing vocals. I'm using air quotes here, but like more like a counter melody kind of. Um, and just a great record. Really, really awesome one. Then you mentioned Slow Gherkin said Shed Some Skin. I think that record is near flawless.
The
Really,
title track on that album is amazing. I was listening to it in bed last night. Like,
yes.
I can't believe I haven't heard this since 1998.
It's a huge record, and it's a very sharp record. I think I talk about it in the book that they kind of suffered from arriving late in the third wave, kind of as the wave is crested, basically.
Yeah.
And because of that, that record got missed by a lot of people. But it's a really cool one. It's not exactly simply third wave. Like I think people who don't like ska would also enjoy it because it shares more sensibilities with like mod rock and like kind of Rocket from the Crypt,
Yeah.
Swami kind of
Right.
music
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Um and then also the song's just really good, you know. They killed it on that one. And then so then the next really big one and a record that really blew up recently is the Korea Girl album, which
Mm.
was completely under the radar for 20 years. And then this, in 2025, people on TikTok discovered it. And now Korea Girl is enormous. They have like millions of listeners now, when it was like 100 2 years ago.
Huh.
And so it's having a moment. It's a band that's having a moment, and the record is really good. It's very like jangly, kind of pavement inspired. It was one of the first ones that Asian Man put out that was like an indicator of their turn towards indie rock, I would say.
Mm.
Um, then really like a huge era is in the early 2000s, the kind of return of like DIY punk, and that would be Bomb the Music Industries, Get Warmer, very important. You could say Scrambles as well. Both are great records. AJJ's, People Who Can Eat People are the luckiest people in the world. And both Lemuria records, I think, are very important.
Buffalo, New York.
That's right. That's right. Totally. Yeah, those ones are all really important. And I don't mean to leave out the Broadways as well. The Broadways
Yeah.
are a big one that I think is like kind of flies under the radar, but are important in the political punk movement, basically. And also just kind of really connect like the Chicago sound to also the East Bay, which was a big part of kind of all of this as well.
Yeah. Oh man, and like the Broadways were huge for me. If I think about the Broken Star record, that opening riff and Dan Hanaway's voice, and then it's like I drove to my stupid job today, got stopped at the intersection, 15 minutes of my life just floats away. I'm just like, oh, as an adult, like that is like so anthemic now to think about that in my 40s. Like every time I'm at a stoplight, I think about the Broadways. It's really crazy how that record has stuck with me over the years. Okay, random question. A lot of people may not know this, but Link 80, one of the earliest signings of the label, the first lead singer Nick Trena, who untimely passed away in the late 1990s, who did 17 Reasons, Killing Katie, and then the Knowledge, A Gift Before I Go albums. Mother, Danielle Steele, who wrote a book about him, His Bright Light, which I owned a copy of for over 20 years until I recently
Mm.
gave it away to Aaron Carnes. So did you reach out to the Trena and the Steele families for any comment about Nick Trena for this book?
I talked to his brother. I talked to Todd Trena, who was very supportive and really like a great person to talk to. I think like talking to him really reinforced the sense that I got that the band really was very tightly knit. I think that band were very young. They were all like teenagers. Nick was a little bit older, but he was the oldest one in the band. But they were mostly either still in high school or just out of high school. And they were like the kinds of friends in the movies that they loved. They were really into like these sort of like tragic um coming of age sort of stories in like Stand By Me and things like and with The Outsiders and things like that and I feel like they kind of carried themselves with a similar energy. And talking to Todd, he was like, he told me like they were really like brothers. This band was like brothers, and this is his brother saying it. And it that was a chapter where I really felt like I needed to um treat with a lot of respect and a lot of concern, because it does involve a lot of tragedy and a lot of uh uh I call it the valley's shadow, because it I have a belief that really everything casts a shadow. Not just physical objects, but really concepts and words, and everything has a shadow that is cast by it, and including great things, including the valley that hosts everybody in this story. Really, it has a shadow as well, and this chapter talks about it a little bit. And I think that there was really talking to Nick Trano's brother. I just it also reinforced the light as well, and that was something that I really wanted to make sure was present. That it's not, you know, shadows require light, and I think that it's important just to have as much light in that area as possible. And Todd was really helpful in that.
What are your plans for the next year of like the rest of 2026, 2027 with relation to this book?
Well, I've got some reading events coming up. I've got one in Pasadena right around the release date, and then I've got one in the works in San Jose, and then I've got two in Portland and in Seattle booked for June. So there's events for kind of immediately afterwards. I've got a couple other podcasts that I've been interviewed for. Um, and then the Rosenstock band's going to be a little bit busy, so I'm going to be kind of on the road with that. But I'm hoping to continue to do book events as often as I can. I want to do some on the East Coast. I have kind of a standing offer from a place in Baltimore, and I would love to string a few things together and have an East Coast run out of it.
Well, last time I saw the Rosenstock band, I think was at the Rapids Theater opening for the Gaslight Anthem here in Niagara Falls, just a few miles away from me. So if you guys come through Buffalo and you want to put together a sort of low-key book event, let me know because I might be able to help because I know some folks here. So if you're in the Buffalo Niagara region, let's work something out.
That sounds
Um,
great.
well, Mike, I could talk to you about this all day. Like as I've gushed to you repeatedly, Asian Man Records is one of the most defining characteristics of my musical fandom of my entire life, going back to eighth grade in St. Louis, seeing MU 330. So the fact that like this book is so important to me and that I cannot put it down. Like my fiance has been kind of like watching me just like tear through this book in a way that I don't normally do with my reading style. Um, I hope that means a lot, and I hope that that is a sincere compliment to you because this is one of the most important books I've ever read with regards to who I became as a person in this world, and I feel like you've captured it so well. So kudos to you on a job well done. For this book, Elvis is Dead, I'm Still Alive, your biography about Mike Park and Asian Man Records. Thank you so much for joining me to chat about this book. I have had an absolute blast nerding out with you about some of the obscurities and some of the amazing hits that Asian Man has done over the last 30 years.
Greg, thank you so much. It's an honor to talk to you about it.